Hi everyone. Um, Thank you for coming into this session about directory services. My name is Yoann Gini and I'm French, so sorry for my accent. I hope you will understand anyway. I'm system and network administrator for one part of my job, working mainly on a SAML network and doing all kind of things related to security, network architecture, smart card services, and etc. And I do a lot of reverse engineering and some hacking too. And as a software developer, you might already used one of my tools like Hello IT or IRD Inspector will allow you to recover your Apple Remote Desktop password and things like that. For today, my goal is to talk about directory services and where we are now, why, what are the issues we are experiencing right now, and what could be the next step for directory services. But first, I would like to ask you something. What is your work for you? Any idea? Well, if I ask you what is your work, what do you answer? Yeah, okay, but what in IT? User support? Everything? Yeah. And what do you manage as you work? I'm sorry? Max? User and equipment? Yeah. So this might be something to look at a little bit. For some, you may think that your work is to managing devices, but in reality, your work is to manage end users. We don't care about devices. Devices is just a tool for the end users. What you are trying to do on a day-to-day is managing users and help them to do their work. And for that, you need to manage their devices. But it's just a step to the users, nothing else. So this led us to a question: what is the user's work? Depending of for who you are working, you have users who work with email, file sharing, web services, whatever. And what's the only thing that a user wants to do is simply say, why, I'm this person, give me access to my file so I can do my work. I don't care about IT or anything. I just want to access my data to do my work. So from your point of view as an IT, this means you only have two questions to ask. Who is accessing my data and who is behind those devices? If you manage to answer those questions, you are able to do your work correctly at each level. So why is it so important for, in my point of view, to manage identity instead of devices? Is, well, if you just rewrite those two questions and do it like this one. What's the authorization level of the users, and so what kind of, which account should be provisioned on the device? Like, for example, if it's a single user device like an iOS one, which mail account should I person it? Maybe it only have one account, the personal one. Maybe you have some service account too, depending of who is the person and what is the level of authorization for this person. So if we look on a more abstract way about what a directory service is supposed to be, and we try to do a bit of functionalities, your directory service is supposed to be able to provide four kinds of information: users, list, roles, and authentications. For example, if with mail services, well, the list of users will give you a yellow page, so internal directory for your company. Your list of users will give you mailing list as the role, maybe. In this case, role and list are the same, maybe. And in the end, you have the authentication service provided by the directory services that would allow you to authenticate your user and be sure about who is asking any kind of data and check them with the authorization level. If we do the same on a SharePoint, for example, the user will be the one who holds the right. your list of users will allow you to show what kind of SharePoint is available. And the role in the company will allow you to say, this person has this kind of authorization level. Is it maybe read-only or read-and-write? It's not a matter of what kind of service this user is attached to. So it's not a matter of the list, but what is the role in the company. And the authentication in the end provides you all data protection linked to this. If we look at a computer, for example, well, the user's part will allow you to know who is behind the device, and the authentication part will allow you to limit access to the device. If we took a look at list and role, we now can see the difference. Depending of the list, you may have configurations pushed to the device, like automatic mounting on file share, automatic configuration of a mail account, and etc. But the role inside the company, is it an internship or is it your boss, will apply different kind of restriction on it. And it's the same if you look at single user devices. So if we try to look back in time and look at how it used to work until now, we were mainly using LDAP for everything. Like every single IT task was using LDAP, and a lot of information was on it. So for example, you was using LDAP for storing your identities, authenticating users, providing location services, like where is my resources, where is the closest monkey repository, for example. You can do this with LDAP, and it was used for that. You can use it to store your restriction, like you may have, for example, some tools who allow you to manage your sudoers list with LDAP if you want. And you can also use it to provide configuration, like we did in the past with M6, or even in some GPO on Windows. But let's just take a look at the last RFC for LDAP. And for those on the back, I will zoom a little bit. And did you look at the last time this protocol has been revised? 1997. So just let's do a time warp and look at what was a thing back in time. Yeah. So basically, you are still working with a protocol who was been released at the same time as macOS 8. Maybe, just maybe, think that's maybe a little change since. Maybe. So, if we look at what we are doing now in work, most of us, we still have a central directory services. We have internal services, we have cloud-based services, we have mobile device or device who are always mobile. And we try to still do the same work with it, but it's maybe a little more complex with, like, maybe internal services keep using LDAP, but cloud services, maybe you will use LDAP to authenticate user, maybe you will use SAML, maybe you will use some custom script to sync your user and list database to a cloud services and replicate the identity instead of consuming the same. And on your computer, you may use LDAP, but maybe with some kind of catching in the middle, because you need to allow users to log on your computer when they are outside the company. And for iOS devices, well, it don't talk LDAP. So like for your computer, you will use MDM to manage the users in this case. And your, so MDM is a protocol. Your enterprise mobility management software will then talk to your LDAP server. So it's maybe start to be a little more complex than just using LDAP. And moreover, the LDAP has an issue with it's something that has to be available when you did it. It's not something will allow you to do your work in advance. You prepare the thing and the device consumes the information when the user asks for it. So when you are trying to think about always mobile devices, it might be an issue. And so nowadays, a lot more and more people are using technology like Nomad, thanks to Joel, to manage devices without having the need to link the user profiles to your directory. So this means nowadays LDAP is used to store your identities, but maybe your identity also synced somewhere else. So this might have an issue when you think about password locking. Like for example, if I sync in one way my identities to Google Suite, for example, and Google decide to lock the account for any kind of security issue, it might not come back to my Active Directory, so I still have some weaknesses somewhere. The same for authenticating the users. It may still use the LDAP, but maybe no, maybe not. Maybe it will be via some other protocol. Like for example, if you are using DEP with authentication enabled, you will use the MDM protocol to authenticate the user during the enrollment step. And the same for storing your restriction. Maybe it will be in the LDAP, maybe it will be in your MDM. And the same for providing configuration. Depending on your network, you may still have both in production, and that's a bad idea. So, with all those protocol, I've talked about SAML. You may not already use it, but in the end you will, I think. SAML is this, allowing you to be authenticated on one services with identity provided by other services. The main idea is you have the service that you want, the service provider. You want to authenticate on it, and relying on web redirection and things like that, your user agent, your client, your web browser, for example, will ask proof of identity to an identity provider, like your Active Directory, for example, and forward this proof of identity to the service provider. Somehow, it's not exactly the same, but in terms of behavior, it might look like Kerberos for web. It's not the same, but it's the same general idea. Like, I don't send my password to a service provider. I don't want my service provider to access my clear text password and send it back to my infrastructure. So this is SAML. So how do you get SAML nowadays? If you have third-party service like Office 365 or Google Suite or Dropbox or whatever, you may want them to be authenticated directly against your directory services to avoid this step of syncing. So when you do that, you have two options at this time. If you use Active Directory and you know how to use all the services related to Active Directory, you may want to go to Active Directory Federation Services, who is at this time a built-in feature allowing you with other things to access to SAML, and at this time it's free, so it's good to use. Or you may want to use some kind of directory as a service provider, cloud-based services like that allow you to sync your identities to cloud providers that will take care of providing the identity provider part for you. If we look at both scenarios in terms of security, here are where the passwords are stored. If you do your IDFS scenario correctly, you have inside your network your Active Directory in read and write mode. In your DMZ, you have your Active Directory in read-only mode, and the IDFS server just use this AD in read-only mode. And then your cloud-based services will come and consume information from your IDFS. If you are using, so still talking about IDFS, the arrow show the direction of information. Who is asking who for what? If we talk about the version with a cloud-based directory directory service, you have your directory service on the web, and somehow a custom protocol will allow you to sync your identities from ID to your external directory. And so your passwords are stored on this external directory service. So in terms of security, this is something you should audit at some time of of your work, because your identities will be out there with all credentials needed to access to all your belonging. So just let's continue to talk about this DAS scenario, the one with a directory service hosted outside. You may want to go a bit further with this, like, why do I still need Active Directory if I'm in a scenario where I'm mobile first? Everyone work at home, and we don't have any office to host any internal server and things like that. We want to be mobile first. So maybe we want to say, well, let's get rid of the Active Directory and just use the cloud-based directory service. And so you won't start to wonder, well, Dropbox, it's okay, I can use SAML, but what can I do for my Mac and my Windows eventually? If I want to authenticate my end users with my directory service, like I was used to, what could I do? Well, in this case, what you will have is a directory service still available online. You will use SAML for your cloud services. You will use certainly something custom like a REST-based protocol for your end device with MDM also. And maybe your internal services will also be made to consume this REST API provided by your directory service. So let's just focus on this part, the one linked to your Mac. The main idea here is to bring you the user provisioning feature. Like, I know this device will be used for these users, and I want to preload the identity on it. I don't want them to wait. I don't want the device to wait for the user to ask to have the identity on it. I want this to be ready. I want this to be ready for offline usage, and I want this as secure as I can and still use a single identity. Not synced identity, not replicated identity. I want to be the same. I want it to be the same identity, so I can still use all security feature provided by the directory service. So this user provisioning part is something really important, I think, for the future. If you do it correctly, you will have great time managing Mac, especially with DUP. So the base contract with the directory service and the device in this time is, here is the device identity, ready to use. You have all information to use it even offline, even if the user didn't ask for it right now. Just keep me updated if you need to lock the account because user did 3 or 4 wrong password, and if the password changed, just send me the info. This is a basic contract between the directory servers and your endpoints when you are doing user provisioning. You give the information before needed, and you ask the device to report any change needed. So, talking about that, you might wonder, what about whatever the cloud-based directory service you are using? So the goal isn't to bash anyone. I don't want to be rude or anything. However, if I have to do a global summary of what I've reversed at this time of existing solutions on the market, most of them are early stage, are using workaround more than production feature to implement on macOS, have big issue with firewall, and something with even more an issue for me as a French guy, it's cloud-based only. I know here in America it's not a big deal, but basically for all European, we don't trust US-based hosting, so we need something who can host on our own infrastructure somehow. at something we can rely on the European law and not the US one. So this is one very big point. Another one is, for me, if I look at what we were used to do with a directory service, the thing that there is no built-in MDM in it. Maybe you have some MDM built-in on, like added to it as a contract between two companies. This might be an issue. This might let us in a scenario where the identity are, synced somehow, and you duplicate your database of users on devices and etc. So for me, this is an issue too. So if I have to work on this and try to think about what could be the ideal next-gen directory services, what will be the bill of functionality, I would say I want something with a built-in MDM, a built-in patch management system, something will enforce me to make the distinction between what is a list and what is a role. And this is something really important, looking at considering all the audit I've did in the past. Most of the time, this is done wrong. The distinction between what is a list of users and what is the role of the users is barely done at this time. I also want something secure by design. So at this time, we all are afraid to just open our Active Directory on the internet because we don't trust it. How bad is it? I want something on first good practices. Like if you followed the workshop we did, the Capture the Flag, we talk about some feature like in Active Directory were really great to actually monitor your network and be sure you don't have any kind of security issue. But it's disabled by default. That don't make sense. And also something what is really important here is the native endpoint integration. If we get rid of the LDAP, and everyone at this time is talking LDAP, we need to find a way to be sure that the integration on your endpoint is as perfect as you can. You should not have any user experience difference than a standard Mac, for example, or a standard on Windows computer. So, this is something I'm working on for a long time now, for a few months, and I'm really pleased to be here to share this with you. With few friends, we have worked on a new project called Easy Login, and the main goal for this is to provide an open source version of cloud-based directory services with a macOS integration done as we think correctly. And we already, at this time, support file vault without any kind of issue. So we did the macOS integration, and we solved the file vault part to be sure that we are able to deliver the quality that we expect. And it's something we write using CouchDB as a database, using Swift as to write the server part, and the server actually work on IBM Bluemix, and it's compatible with the Cloud Foundry standard. That means you can deploy the server part in a click and 5 minutes of wait on any kind of cloud-based hosting, even your private one. Even if you want to take more time on it, you can do it on any kind of Ubuntu server since it's use Swift. So you can deploy it on anywhere you want. So this was something really important for us, being European-based. So I would like to show you a early stage demo of where we are now. Here I basically have a macOS device already connected to Easy Login. So the server here is hosted on the IBM data center in Germany at this time. I only have one user actually, so I just log out, and I will create a new user right now. So let's just zoom in. this admin UI is here only for development purpose. In the end, we will do something more nicer, but still native. We want to be as much as possible native and native on macOS and iOS for the administrative tools, so we can use all the power linked to the system itself to do some interesting thing with the administration part. So I will just create a new users, and like for example on this part we are trying to be more specific on the field available. Like for example, you may already know what a short name is, but how many of you are letting the default value, especially in the SAM account field on Active Directory, letting the end user with a username who maybe don't have the full name and would just stop in the middle of a word on something. So in the way we will build the admin UI, we will try to enforce the thing with the right example. Like a short name is supposed to be like, for example, a tree name or something short by design. So my user is created. Now, like any Mac devices bound through a directory service, you have your others item for users who aren't still used on your device. So you can use it right now. And your session is being created with the Mac, like every standard process here. Home folder being created, iCloud being asked for configuration, and etc. So it's the same as you already used to. And this step, I didn't disconnect it, but this step can be done offline. You don't need to be online to use your identity, even if it's the first time you use it. So for example, what we can do right now is, let's say you are deploying a bunch of computers, you assign the identity to a device, and you send it directly via mail to someone, and someone use it for the first time on an airplane, it will work. So I have my user session with here. Password change, as expected, will be relying on macOS native features. You don't have any difference here. If I change my password here, yeah, as expected, and so the keychain is synced. And if, for example, I will do it after, if I am offline at the time of doing it, I just have an error message saying me, well, your server is not available, you can change the password right now, of course. So this is a basic scenario. Like, I warn you, it will be the most boring demo you will ever see, because it's just as expected. Yeah, it just works, trademark. So users who are now already being connected to the device are available as a shortcut on the login screen. But again, if the user is provisioned to this device, even if it's not seen here, you can use it even offline. And now, if we try to do some more interesting things, like enabling the users for 5 volts. Well, let's just do something else before that. Let's say the users forgot the password. Well, as expected, you just have to reset the password from your admin portal. And it works instantly. You don't have to wait, it's real time, and as you've seen, you see the keychain error. Like every time you do a reset password, of course you will see this keychain error, because keychain don't have any fallback scenario to get access to the content of it. So I want to move on my admin account, I will just enable this user for 5 volts. This virtual machine is has 5 volt already enabled, and I will just allow this user to be allowed to boot the computers. This part, I will do it with the standard macOS UI. However, this directory service is compliant with any kind of management you already have. If you have some custom script to allow to automatically allow all users who pass by the login window on 5 volt, it will work. If you use an MDM, it will work the same, and etc. Okay. So what we are doing in terms of network management is basically we push all the information to the device like it expects to be for an authentication part. So my user is here. I can boot as expected. And in terms of password recovery, if, for example, the user loses the password, well, all you have to do is reset it on the admin UI, and as always, find a way to boot the Mac, like using another account available on the device or using your recovery key. No change on this. As soon as the device is back online to be able to receive the push notification from the servers, it will be able to grab the new identity of the users and be able to use it directly. So let's just let this device boot until the end. Yes, of course.
When you say offline, does that mean, sorry?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
When you say first use offline, does that mean the machine has to have connected, at least at the login screen,
Nope.
to the net to have cached it?
No. It has to be connecting once in the past. I mean, if like you are deploying your device, like you pre-enroll your device in your MDM and directory services at your IT desk. At this time, the device is connected. If at this time you say this user will be able to use this machine, that's all you need.
Okay.
And you don't need to know the password for this.
But you need to have created the user account, or at least know what the account is.
You don't really create the account. You just say this device will be allowed for these users. So basically the server will provision the identity. And for devices, for a company who would like to do it, you can just provision all users to your devices. That's basically what we did during the demo. The system can do partial or full sync on the device, depending on the security level that you want. So it will work the same. And basically, our goal with the MDM part is to use the DEP enrollment step to provision the right identity directly to the device and be able to consume it even if the user just opens the Mac, do the DEP enrollment, and close it. Yes?
So you kind of already answered my question, but I was going to ask about, like, you could technically just do DEP, and as long as they connect it to Wi-Fi, you would get that directory services.
Yeah.
Now, my other question is could you run this in tandem with your current Active Directory so that, your Windows admin's happy, but you get the benefits?
Technically, the system is open, and everything relies on documented API. So this will require you to write somehow a plugin to the Active Directory to sync the identity to the third-party database, like you do with any kind of directory service right now, and this will work the same. All you need to do is to provide two things. Maybe the clear text password, and we take care of it, or directly the encoded version of the password, like whatever the kind of password etching the original service will provide you. Somehow we can be compatible with it. And so if we just have the the hash of it, the hash of the passwords of the end user, it will be okay for the for the directory service. So as expected, the 5-volt boot directly on the computer, and the session is open. You don't have any kind of double login to do and nothing like that. And if you try to do a password change offline, so I'm now offline. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Server is not available, so you can change the password, as expected. So that's all for the demo part. Regarding what you've just seen, source code will be 100% free of as beer and as speech. And in terms of business model, it's always important for me to understand what's the business model of the service provider when I try to work with someone, because depending on what kind of business model they have, I may or may not trust them. So the code will be 100% free and open source and whatever. And to maintain it, what we will do around this is professional services for companies who want help to do it on their own system. And we will offer also ready to go cloud-based instance, but dedicated instance. We won't go on shared things. We will just use IBM Bluemix correctly to create dedicated instance for everyone, and make the money needed to continue on this project with that. So it's really free source code as beer and as speech available right now. If you go on github.com/easylogin project, you already have almost all the source code. And with one just specific note, the source code of the macOS agent we write for this demo will be available open source, but in the future, the thing is, I want to be sure that this project profits to the open source community. So the solution we created, I protect it until we are ready to ship a full solution. So the roadmap will be this one. At this time, you have the macOS framework. So the macOS framework we created to create the agent is open source. The admin UI is open source. The server is open source. We will work next on the Monkey server part, on a DEP and MDM integration built into the login server, open source as well. And then we publish the macOS agent and offer services for Mac-only solution. And then we will be able to do exactly the same for Windows, with the same level of integration on Windows. And we also be able to provide solution to authenticate Radius and old school LDAP services to this central server, as well as open source as the rest of the solution. Everything will be open source. So that's all. I've managed to let a lot of time for question and demo if you want. So feel free to ask whatever you want. You have the catch box here, just to allow the recording of your question.
Okay, so the first question is, when you were showing that you didn't have to create a user, I think there's some confusion there. You didn't have to create the user on the device, but you still had to create the user in the service, the LDAP service.
So you have to create a user,
right.
Yes, of course.
But what I'm saying is that you couldn't just ship a device out before you create it. You'd have to create the user first in the LDAP service before you ship the device.
It depends of how you prepare the device. If you let DEP do the work, you don't care.
Right. So if you use the auth on DEP, then it's fine.
Yeah. If you rely on DEP with authentication, with the DEP authentication, you can use this to provision the device on the fly during the DEP configuration step.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured.
One of the items listed on there was Monkey integration. I was just curious what that means or what it looks like.
Well, our goal on this is The thing is, we don't want to, we don't think it's a good idea to have separate database of computers, like for example, or users, or etc. So in terms of management, we want to be able to use our directory groups and devices and etc. to target the patch management system and application distribution and things like that. And the thing is, we all already rely on VPP plus Monkey. So the goal is to be able to have a unified interface allowing us to use Monkey for everything with not on VPP and Monkey when and VPP when needed, but still have the same user interaction, the same user experience for the IT. So this part will be will allow you to manage your Monkey catalog, say which item go to what kind of devices or group of devices, and will also take care of the replication of it. So we will provide some kind of sync services allowing you to replicate your directory, your Monkey repository on all your campus, as you might want to do to save your bandwidth.
So one of the disasters that I've been dealing with directory services right now is we use QNAP NAS, and with AFP they have massive problems.
Yeah.
So they have to use SMB.
Yes.
How is the because it doesn't work with Open Directory
Well,
and,
the
and
thing
the
is,
QNAP? How is your
on-
SMB
yeah,
implementation?
on all NAS that you have, this AFP issue you have is not linked to directory service or whatever. It's NetaTalk with a bit complex to use and maybe not really well integrated on NAS. And for NAS who consume LDAP for identities or anything we use LDAP for identities, we will be able to provide a bridge for REST API to LDAP. The thing is, the client side, the consuming side, the service will use the LDAP part has to be developed correctly, and that might be something really unsure depending of what kind of service you use, because a lot of people just mix LDAP and Active Directory and don't completely forget about what this LDAP schema is. So in terms of the LDAP adapter, we will try to comply as much as possible with the standard POSIX of LDAP, not the Active Directory one, who is a bit complex to reproduce, and it's not needed in terms of LDAP. So if your service is able to consume any kind of open LDAP, let's say, it will work.
The problem with QNAP in particular, and I don't know if this is other, is with SMB and Open Directory. It has to do with the identifiers. It's just they won't log in over SMB. It just won't even connect.
I don't know for this specific detail because it looks to be like the QNAP don't know how to consume correctly on LDAP. But basically, if your LDAP is working with any kind of open LDAP server, it will be the same.
Okay.
Any other question?
Can you start to talk a little bit more about your Windows functionality and what you're what you mean by functionality that you're going to be adding to it? And are you also talking about developing then a monkey-like thing for Windows?
So for Windows part, we didn't start to work on it. However, we know that the integration we did for the authentication part can be done exactly the same on Windows. So we will do this kind of provisioning your user identity, being able to use it for the first time offline, etc. Exactly the same. And for the patch management and everything, we will rely on the MDM protocol of Windows. So it's still something new and not really usable at this time, but we do hope it will be better in time. So we don't intend to rely on anything from the past. We want to do it. We did a project from scratch, so we want to build on technology we are creating right now, not trying to do it for previous system or everything. At this time, this project can work on since 10.9, I think. However, I'm not sure if we will ship the source code for it because we want to take advantage of new coding capability of the new OS instead of supporting previous OS. Since we want to use it with DEP, MDM, and etc., it doesn't really make sense for us to be backward compatible, even if we technically can. We still have time, so if you want to ask me to experience something, like to test it or not. Yeah, question on the back.
So does it already have SAML functionality?
SAML functionality is not yet here, but it's something we will do in short period of time. It's not that big to implement. This is a good thing when you start to, as a comparison to any kind of other project, when you start to build the directory service by your own, you already have all information you want. So adding some services is quite easy to do. Like for example, the macOS agent, we did the proof of concept in 3 weeks. It's really something it's good when you try to design, you have the ability to design the directory service by yourself and you are not relying on LDAP anymore. LDAP is something really, really, really hard to use in terms of modern usage and who somehow stuck us in a period who are not ours anymore.
Any support for the user picture or the equivalent of the JPEG photo key in Active Directory?
In terms of user identity, we expect to do more than what we do right now in a directory service, especially since we have some needs. Well, my customer has some needs in terms of IT, so I will build them directly on the directory service, and basically, picture will be supported, of course. We will have 3 kinds of information about the users with access control on it to tell which role has access to which kind of information, to have basic account info like principal name and tree name, personal information for human resources, and professional information for internal yellow page. And in terms of authentication, right now we have username and password, and it should not be really complicated for us to add smart card support and 2 factors using Google Authenticator or whatever, any kind of OTP system. It should work. The only question we were gonna be, smart card will be able to work for offline usage, and OTP we ask the device to be online to work. So it will depend on what we want to do. Victor?
So I watched this and I tried to figure out if I'm understanding everything really well or not understanding everything at all.
Yeah.
So just correct me if I misunderstood the flow of the agent to the server. My understanding is that you have an agent, which talks to your server when there's an online connection, and it pulls down the hashes for your users.
Yes.
Does it pull down the hashes for all the users?
No, only for the provisioning one.
Only for the provisioning. And then when I'm typing my password to log in, you generate a PKDF2 hash, and you verify it against the existing one. Okay. Yes. But what if a new user tries to log in? Like, what if Eric is in the same directory?
It will depend of your policy on this. We will implement, so I've shortly talked about the way we sync the users. Basically, you can tell all users are synced everywhere if you want. Like if you are a university or something and you want all students be able to log everywhere, why not? Maybe not a good idea, but if you want to, why not? The thing is, we have what we call a sync set, a list of users synced to a device or a group of devices. And we have worked on a process allowing multiple automatic mode for the sync part, like no automatic management. So if the user hasn't been authorized, linked to this device, you won't be able to use it as a security purpose. Or also, we may be able to have some user we will be able to use online only. Like, for example, I want my IT to be able to log everywhere, but I don't want them to be able to log offline. Okay, so all IT support can be allowed to log when the device is connected to the network. And we will also have automatic assignment mode, like all devices are not linked to anyone first. And of course, the first time you use, you will have to be online. But since you use it online, when the first authentication online did, we automatically sync to it. So we have all the steps to match all kinds of needs you may have, depending of your custom scenario. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, and the second short question is, Apple with 10.13 changed the way file vault works with escrow.
Yeah.
Are you doing the new method, or are you still
Well, I will answer like that. I don't know how it works on the next version, but whatever Apple do, it will be compatible.
Okay.
And I don't have to check it to be sure.
It's soft, yeah. So we dealt with the Mac agent and the Windows agent. What about Linux, Fedora?
It could be
or
done the
Ubuntu?
same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not on the roadmap right now, but technically it could be done the same.
So I have another question. So if you have all the users synced and you have a database, if someone has a crappy password, could they then use that to figure out the other hashes of other users?
No.
Why?
Well, SRP. We at this time it's right now it's not implemented, but we will go on the secure remote password standard to do this kind of thing and be sure that all passwords are encrypted in a way that even if you know one, you can't understand the. Well, you will be able to understand the process done, but all the salt and thing in the middle won't be the same.
So random salt for every single user or something. Okay. Yeah.
And moreover, if I try to do a big picture of secure remote password, is basically salt for the users and for the device was the user synced. So from one device to another, the hash won't be the same.
And then one more question. Have you worked around with the secure enclave on the new MacBook Pros, maybe trying to add it in there or something like that?
Not
or
yet.
using that as a hash or something?
No, at this time we didn't try.
Okay.
Nice.
Are you going to have support for multiple directory servers, such as if server A goes down, then server B can take over the work?
Well, it's a HTTPS protocol, so it's REST-based. So the server part, so the Swift code we write, is completely stateless. You will never have any kind of state recorded on the server. Everything will rely on CouchDB and the CouchDB replication system. So it will be able to be load balanced as you want. So if you just want one database and multiple workers, you can do it. If you want multiple workers on multiple databases, you can do it. It's just like any kind of web server and web protocol you use. Stateless and relying on CouchDB.
So to follow up on that, then I could install, say, caching servers at various locations that would be available kind of based off of a main cloud service.
Yep. Well, basically, it's for which part are we talking about?
For the server.
Yeah, for the server, it's the only information is in the database. So as long as you synced your database correctly, it will work wherever you are. And you will use DNS-based kind of like
Redirection.
Anycast DNS and things like that to reach the closest based on your IT decision to redirect based on, for example, using DNS view to say, well, this range of IP go to this server for this request. Well, you can use this to load balance your infrastructure as you want. It will be all based on all the load balancing thing will rely on HTTPS protocol. Other question, maybe? Okay. Yeah. Oh.
All right, so I see a launch D file.
Yes.
Any concerns if that goes away? What happens?
Well, the launch D, so you are on the agent part.
Yes.
So the launch D is the same, let's say, is the same as the MDM client. So its job is to maintain a WebSocket to the server to get push notification of any password change or etc. So basically, if your service is or your agent is down, the application still work. So the authentication still work. You can still change your password, but you don't receive the update. So if someone resets your password, you don't receive the update. So this can be improved by adding, for example, we can do multiple services like this one with always waiting for push, and maybe we can add cron-based sync and everything. Also, something we have not yet implemented, but in the authentication part, one of the goals is to be able to watch in the same time on both storage, like the local one and the server one. So when a login happens, we can trigger a sync to be sure that we are always already updated before allowing the user to log in. So we can have multiple fallback in case of, for whatever reason, the WebSocket isn't working. And the thing is, since it will be relying on application who are not on the App Store and etc., we can't use the push notification service by itself. Question? For Victor.
So going back, you were saying that you're pushing down, well, you're pulling the hashes of the password over REST HTTP. Any concerns that a caching server somewhere, a proxy that you're going through, is doing caching and saving those passwords? Are they encrypted somehow?
Well, in terms of security of the transmission, it will rely on HTTPS with cert-based authentication. Like we will basically rely on the certification issued by the MDM with certificate binding. So basically, if someone do a air gap in the middle, it won't work.
There's lots of like Palo Alto things like that that are still like there's lots of things that man-in-the-middle TLS that the organization is doing, like a government agency or a school is man-in-the-middling their own certs.
Well,
so how does
that model? The thing is, we will use certificate binding on the client side.
So, but your customer will ask you to disable that.
If the thing is, this is more generic comment about this, but if your organization asks you to decrypt any HTTPS protocol, when it's something inside, you don't have to rely on a fake certificate. It's inside, so you already have the master key. So if, in this case, we want add some weakness to manage this. So basically, if you need to unencrypt the communication with passing on your network, well, you own the server side, so you already have the private key of the communication, so use it to decrypt it if your organization asks it to do. On our side, our goal will be to be as strong as possible and do everything we can to be sure that no one is able to decrypt without us noticing the man in the middle. So we will try to be as best as we can in terms of security, And if it don't match with current IT policy in terms of SSL decryption in the middle, well, it's not for us. Other question? Okay. Thanks, everyone. In terms of directory services, you have another talk during the week that might be interesting for you, done by John Cloud. So it will be Friday, no, not Friday, well, I don't remember when, at 9 a.m. on room 205. So you have one other session dedicated to this kind of thing during the week. So feel free to come and see how it goes. And I would like to thank you again for to attend this session. Don't forget the feedback for the PSU team, and that's all. Thanks a lot to